Well, thanks again, Heidi, for joining me today. And, as I mentioned to you, the reason for the conversation is to help our customers, the community that we work with, HR professionals and everybody who's going through these times and adjusting through these times to support the remote employees working from home. Give them some ideas and somebody with your experience. A lot of people are going to be really looking forward to hearing from you. So would love to hear a little bit more about yourself if you want to introduce yourself.
Of course. Thanks, Marcus, for having me. I'm happy to help the Hoppier team. I have a really unique role. I work for Ottawa's Economic Development Agency, Invest Ottawa, and Bayview Yards, and I'm actually the head of HR for Invest Ottawa and Bayview Yards. But I have the pleasure and privilege of being able to work with companies like you who are basically growing their organizations, and I work with all of our programs. So I work with our accelerator companies, so those even in the pre-accelerator where they're starting their businesses and they may have an idea, they may be two-person founder team, straight through to our scale-up programming, which is companies that are often scaling, sometimes 50 million plus in revenue. So a lot of HR puzzles that I get to see and witness and really try to support our companies as they're navigating their journey towards success.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think that's one of the reasons that I was super excited to chat with you, because you work with so many different sizes of organizations. And I think that alone is going to give a lot of insight to people who will be checking this out. How has the transition to work from home been for you?
I mean, I have an incredible team. I've got, we have incredible clients, and everybody's been really amazing about the adjustment we've all had to make. I think recognizing that everyone is going through this at the same time does, bring a bit enhanced empathy and understanding for things that don't always go as planned. I had to cancel a meeting yesterday with a client because my 3-year-old wasn't going to allow me to have that meeting, and he understood because he also has a 3-year-old, or he has 2 3-year-olds. So I think it's, there's an empathy there and an understanding that we haven't seen before. And I think that that's made it an easier transition for a lot of us. And I think everyone has unique family circumstances, and I think employers need to appreciate that. And there's this need for flexibility and understanding, and really truly understanding what everyone on your team needs to be thriving in their work at this stage in such an uncertain time.
I'm talking with companies. I talk with various ages, and that every person has their own circumstance. And if they're late to the call, if they're need to cut the call short, like it's super important to be understanding right now, because there's just circumstances that we're all dealing with that are new to us. And it's I think what's been amazing is that there's been no problem with that empathy. Like everybody seems to have kind of adapted that and been super understanding. And I think it's really important during these times. And working from home, like for us, it was also something that was accepted and encouraged when needed. But for me personally, like yourself, like I love being in the office. I love being with the people, sharing the energy. Like we really thrive off energy from each other, and especially in a startup sense, the energy that you gain from others really helps you stay motivated. So I think that's something that, is difficult when you transition to work from home, but you have to find ways to still be able to do that. Did you guys do anything in particular when you first moved to work from home, like for your team, or was it?
We did a lot of things. I mean, I'll pick 3. I think one of the things we did was we made sure that everyone was safe and that they were in a position where they could be successful at home. 100%, that was our priority, making sure the health and well-being of our team, that was our number 1 priority. And so making that transition and those decisions were pretty easy to make, and then making sure that they had what they need to be successful at home. And then again, recognizing everybody's unique situation, figuring out what that looked like, and helping to work with them to ensure they could be at their best when they could be at their best at work.
Yeah.
The second thing I think that we did as a leadership team is we ended up starting to have really regular daily stand-ups. So, we start our day together every morning, and that's been wonderful because we can connect and find out how we're all doing, but get a sense of what's going on in the organization. And that's been wonderful. And I would say the third thing, we've always been really innovative and creative with programs. And, from an HR perspective, and I know your clients who own the HR role will laugh. We've always had to be lean and mean with our finances because we don't just generally get huge budgets. And I think this has just further encouraged our team to be more innovative, more creative on what we could do to create that sense of community amongst our team, create that sense of connectiveness. So we're doing things like virtual coffees to virtual social hours, from 5 to 7 on occasion. We have Friday lunches together. We have
Nice.
spirit days every
Yeah.
week. We've got a lot of activity going on just to keep everybody connected to one another. It's all voluntary, of course,
Yeah.
and people choose what they want to do and where. We have a great Lunch and Learn series that we had before that is seeing a really enhanced participation in terms of people coming to the table to actually deliver a lunch and learn for their colleagues, and those coming to actually enjoy some time with their colleagues. So I think there's a lot of things you can do, recognizing everyone's trying to be lean on budgets. There's still ways to be innovative and creative. And my big, recommendation to any of our clients, and I would say to anybody that's listening to this, is find out what matters to your people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Find out how they want to connect, find out what they want to be connecting about, empower them to be part of that process. HR doesn't have to lead everything. They can be the catalyst and the champion, and they can help make it happen, but empower your team to be part of the process and get involved. I certainly know the success we have had with our Lunch and Learn series is only driven because we've had so many amazing, talented members of our team step up to deliver those Lunch and Learns.
I think one point you made there is empowering your team to really step up and take initiative with finding new ways to connect with people is super important, because, in these times, I think people will look to HR for that guidance, but really there's so many different ideas that can be implemented. I can give one example from us is we set up this tool called Discord, which essentially acts like an active voice channel where you can essentially be in that channel and anybody can chat whenever they feel like it.
That's awesome.
And there's always a couple of us in it during the day, and it almost feels like you're with them in a room, because if somebody wants to chime in or just speak about something, you can bring up these topics, and it makes that availability of walking to somebody's desk still there. But, to your point, like, I think HR is faced with this challenge, but almost this opportunity to really be innovative. And I think that's in a way an exciting time for HR leaders, because when there are challenges, that means you can find new solutions, you can find new ways to approach ways to connect people together. And I mean, especially now when everybody's going through this, I think people are looking for these ways.
I've seen, I think, a lot of, all hands meetings, all staff meetings going virtual. And I think those meetings that we never thought would work virtually are working. And I think that's surprising a lot of people. So I do see some kind of work behaviors possibly changing as we transition, to a new normal after the pandemic, because I think that a lot of people are surprising themselves on how productive they can be, how their teams are still feeling connected and still able to have those team meetings. Yes, it's a bit different, and you have to have sort of different guiding principles. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, I think that enhanced communication, and just people are looking for everyone to, to their leaders to be leading. And I think that, enhanced communication, that transparency, and just that guiding principle of, having folks lead the way they want to be led in terms of having the information that they need to have to be successful. I think those things are, again, just normal guiding principles. We're just seeing it enhanced.
Totally. And I think that's like in moments like this is when the values that a company has and an organization has really stand out and almost feel elevated, because you don't have that in-office connectivity or the same connectivity that you would in the office, where you can see each other interact all the time. Like now, a lot of these interactions and a lot of communication really gets, like you said, heightened, and I think people's values, companies' values are really standing out, and that's what I've seen in our organizations and with other companies that I've chatted with, is that those values that a company has are really coming out, and I think highlighting that is important as well. And I think one of the things that I've seen as well as a common practice now is taking the time to really recognize individuals who are kind of showing those values. It's easy in the office to go over to somebody and congratulate them for doing a good job, or saying thank you. Now when you're, whether you use Slack or you use a tool like that where you send an email, recognizing somebody almost feels like it feels a lot more powerful.
It's that virtual high five as opposed to the actual, high five, right? So
yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think with HR, like there's so many different areas that you can focus on now. I mean, with the connectivity, the transparency, the communication you mentioned. I think those are big areas. Do you think that there's there's an area in particular that HR should focus on, or is it more so just being there for your team? How do you think that evolves?
So I was with a bunch of HR peers just yesterday, and we were talking about the importance of self-care and self-care for ourselves, because a lot of HR practitioners are navigating a new way of working and helping to make sure that everyone else is healthy and safe. And I think self-care for HR leaders, I think, is really important right now, taking time for themselves to just, kind of look around, kind of be grateful, recognizing that they're doing the best that they can given the circumstances. Because I think, ultimately HR leaders need to be focused on the health and wellness of our people, and not necessarily, recognizing that a lot of our folks hopefully are now working remotely and are self-isolating themselves to protect themselves and their family, but it's more now the mental health and wellness. And so there's a lot of pros about working remotely, right? We've talked about some of them.
Yeah.
The ability to work remotely and, avoid commuting. It helps the environment. You can stay connected with your family more than you normally would have potentially. There's a lot of pros, but, one of the biggest kind of downsides is that feeling of isolation. So while you and I think, are both extroverts and like to be in the office, and we've transitioned really well because we can talk with our peers and our colleagues on the video chat, not everyone's that comfortable doing that. And so I think, I'm always focused on, and I know my HR peers are as well, is who's not managing the transition as well, who needs a little bit extra TLC, recognizing your audience as a workforce, and knowing that, some people have unique family circumstances where they may be living alone. And what does that look like for them? What does this situation look like for them, and how are they managing? So I would say, self-care for the HR leader is really important, because you have to essentially help take care of everyone else. If you're not at your best, you're not going to be able to identify that other people are at their best. So I would say twofold. The focus should be about making sure your health and wellness is strong and solid. And if you're struggling, reach out and talk to someone and get support. And then also, help your leaders identify the various transitions, the various, personality changes potentially, or even productivity changes to help identify where some people may be struggling.
How would you say to approach somebody who may need that extra help? Do you reach out to them individually, or do you suggest ways for them to maybe feel more productive or find ways to be more productive?
Mm-hmm.
How would you go about approaching that?
It's a really great question. I was asking this question to the subject matter expert I was speaking to just a few days ago. And, I think what I would do personally is, I think it would be depending on who the individual is, finding out who maybe has the best relationship with that individual. It may be HR, it may be their manager, it may be a colleague, trying to ensure that they feel as safe as possible when someone does reach out to them. And really trying to ensure they have the tools and resources that they need, so that at their level of comfort that they can hopefully reach out and get support. I think the other thing too is, as an organization, you can be very broad in terms of making sure that all employees have access to tools and resources, crisis lines that are available 24/7, information online, resources that are available, so that just in case, because sometimes you will be able to identify when someone is challenged and struggling, and there are many other times when you wouldn't be able to. And that person may need the resources and the information just as much. So I would say, take a step back and absolutely look out for those individuals that are demonstrating changes potentially in their behavior and their personalities, and help give them, tools and resources as soon as possible. But I would also say, more broadly, make sure that's readily available for everyone, because someone might not be exhibiting changes, but still need the support. And I think that's really important. And the reality is, Marcus, these are times that a lot of us haven't seen before, uncharted territory, a lot of unknowns. It's a stressful time with that uncertainty. And I think people's stress levels generally are probably more heightened than normal. And so mental health and wellness is really important. I also think that, I've been seeing a lot of great stuff online about just again, when I said at the top of the meeting, I'm not apologizing anymore for my children, because I'm very proud of them, but I'm acknowledging that there's likelihood that we may get an interruption.
Interrupted, yeah.
And I think that language is important. It is about also demonstrating that, this is not the normal way that we've all been working before. This is new. And I think everyone's got to, give themselves a bit of a break and just recognize that, do the best that you can given your circumstances. Remember to always communicate with your leader what you need, what would make it more successful for you. Make sure that you have open dialogue with your leader. I think that's essential. And I think as HR leaders, we need to just be checking in to make sure those discussions are happening. And that we're also, I think, alternating how we're communicating with our folks. Because if you and I are always texting one another, maybe once in a while I should pick up the video call and ping you that way, or I should pick up the phone and call you. And I think we naturally as humans get very comfortable with the way that we communicate with one another. But in this time, we need to switch it up because we're not seeing each other face to face live. And so I do encourage people to kind of go outside their comfort zones and get off Slack once in a while, or off Teams, or whatever you use, and actually pick up the phone and have a conversation so you can hear the person's voice, or jump on a video call. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about the different forms of communication. It just made me think about how we're communicating in our team as well. And again, I think I would go back to that one tool that we use. It's helped with having that voice channel where everybody can jump in the channel and just chat with each other. We've gotten comfortable with that in a sense, but every time I hop on a call with a colleague on a video call, it's always refreshing to do that and actually get to see the face. So I think having these different channels of communication is super important.
I think it's also good to keep it fresh, right? So people do get comfortable, and there's consistency kind of sets in. I'm a big believer in keeping things fresh and trying different things so that you and your team may do this for a couple of weeks and decide, let's do something different. Let's explore a different tool, a different resource. And that does keep things fresh and keeps people kind of engaged and curious. And you may see, when you see a down kind of decline in people participating, that's when you need to do something different to get people back onto that channel. I always call it the kind of the pizza lunch. When you host pizza every Friday and everybody comes the first 3 weeks, and then you start seeing that decline in people actually coming to get pizza, or they take their pizza and they go back to their desk, that's when you got to switch it up. Because your initial goal wasn't necessarily just to feed your people and give them pizza. It was actually to bring your community together.
Yeah. I really appreciate all the insights you shared with me and with everybody else who's going to be listening and reading on this. It's incredible what's happening right now. And in some ways, I think there are things you have to look on to be grateful about and be positive about in these times. And I know a lot of people will really appreciate hearing from you. So thanks again so much, Heidi, for sharing with us today.
Well, it was a pleasure to be here, and I wish you a great afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good afternoon.
Take care, Heidi.